This is a presentation by myself, Sean Nyman, at an economic summit. The nation is experiencing a wide margin of economic disparity. This is causing rioting and massive civil unrest. I am representing the sociological viewpoint and some potential solutions. The panel I am addressing has various disciplines. Some of those disciplines represented are economics, political science, psychology, criminal justice, and law. The sociological view of economic disparity and income inequality in the United States. Why is economic disparity and income inequality a problem? We'll give some discussion to this. How large of a disparity is the problem? The conflict theory perspective. How did we get here? And lastly, some suggestions on how we might fix this. This is some key terminology that we will use in this presentation. Economic disparity, the difference in income of the wealthier and poorer parts of society. Income inequality, the extent to which income is unevenly distributed in society. Social capital, networks of relationship in a society that enables society, or more precisely the individuals in that society, to prosper socially or economically. Conflict theory, a social theory that proposes individuals and groups in society that make up social classes have differing amounts of capital. The group with more assets uses them to exploit the less powerful group in society in order to maintain economic or political control. Structural amplification. Educated people, socioeconomically advantaged, amass and accumulate advantages, and poorly educated people, socioeconomically disadvantaged, amass disadvantages. The problem. We live in a society that is economically unequal. A smaller share of national income is flowing to wages and earnings, especially people at the lower end of the socioeconomic spectrum. And more importantly, inequality within that labor share is widening. Middle income workers make no more than they did in the late 1970s in real wages. Financial inequality is greater now than at any time in the last century. The gap between the wealthy and the rest of us is widening. The richest 1% in the U.S. claims 1/3 of the nation's wealth. Between 1979 and 2007, the real incomes of the richest 1% almost tripled, while the median household income rose only 25%. Income and wealth distribution. Very few people control the majority of the money and resources. Money can buy power and influence, and allow those with the most money to stay in control. As you can see by this graph, it is greatly tilted toward the end, the right end, the 80th and 90th percentile, and increases exponentially as you get closer to the 100th percentile. The super rich pay less in taxes. Changes in taxation in the late 1950s and 60s. The super rich were taxed at 80 to 90%. The economy, middle class, and stock market surged. The economy was strong. Today's tax rates are low, especially for the wealthy, when compared to the past century. So, how did we get here? Social conflict theory. In social science, power is the ability to influence the behavior of people. Those in power want to stay in power and will use coercion, exploitation, or any other means to do so. Marxist conflict theory. Social classes in society have differing amounts of resources, and the group with more resources uses their power to exploit the group with fewer resources. Weberian conflict theory. Conflict is rooted in a desire for power, and power is the ability to force someone to do something that they really don't want to do. Mill's conflict theory. Power is manifested in three types: authority, manipulation, and coercion. These types of power are wielded upon society by the military, industry, and the political system. Marx's conflict theory. There are two classes in society: production or ownership, which is the bourgeoisie, and the labor, proletariat. People's relationship in society relates to these two levels in means of production. Number one, they own the productive means, that's the bourgeoisie, or they labor for others, the proletariat. The wealthy or the production owners tend to hold political power, which they use to exploit the laborers. Through coercion, unequal social order is maintained by acceptance of the controlling group's values, expectations, and conditions of life as set forth by the bourgeoisie. The superstructure of society, government, culture, and economics, is manipulated by the class in power and help to establish the base standards for society, which almost always benefit them. Social stratification. This causes many problems. Rankings in society fall along lines of race, gender, and socioeconomic status. In many cases, people's life expectancies and opportunities, as availed by education or social capital, are determined by their place in the system. Structural amplification reinforces or compounds or amplifies the advantages of those at the top and disadvantages of those at the bottom. Marx believed that eventually the proletariat would create class consciousness, leading to revolt and a change in society to create balance socio-economically. He felt this would eventually lead to a new balanced society, socialism, or maybe even eventually his utopian communism. The ruling class does whatever it can to stay in control. Laws are generally there to benefit them. Capitalism creates a perpetual divide in society. The gap between rich and poor gets wider and wider each year. It gets harder and harder for those in the middle or at the bottom to maintain or get ahead. The labor has to work harder to make the same amount in jobs that are emotionally and spiritually unfulfilling, and apathy begins to set in. Marx defined these feelings as alienation. When crisis occurs, the wealthy or production owners get support in terms of government bailouts, or can use their extensive social capital network to help them. When the middle or lower class struggles, they are left to fend for themselves. Capitalism cannot sustain itself, according to Marx. The worker is paid less and less, and he is actually paid less than the value of his or her labor in order to create profit. This is a vicious cycle that will end in revolt. Exploiting the worker and paying them less and less for more and more labor is unsustainable. The few are profiting on the many and causing them misery. Capitalism is extremely chaotic in nature. Capitalist systems rely on crisis for stimulus, and this crisis creates instability in the long run, making it difficult to reliably achieve profits and keep workers employed. In addition to this, according to Marx, modern industrial work is alienating. It is robotic and dehumanizing. It takes away the workers' individuality and creativity. The workers are left feeling unsatisfied. Marx envisioned revolt by labor and a change in the societal structure. He believed the proletariat will create a class consciousness and join together to overthrow the bourgeoisie. Eventually, through the process of dialectical thinking, we will create a socialist and eventually a communist utopian state. All private property will be abolished, along with inheritance. A heavy progressive income tax will be instituted. State will own production, and the state will control banking, amongst other changes. Class distinctions will disappear, and there will be no more class conflict due to the fact that we will all work half days and have the rest of our time for leisure and self-actualization. We will all be equal. Creativity and individualism will be highly valued in this society. Is this a realistic guideline for us? Did Marx have a realistic guideline for what we face now in society? Probably not. It's probably not a realistic cascade of events. But we can take the best of these ideas and put them into use to reduce the economic divide in our society. Marx was a genius. It is amazing to think he saw this phenomenon in his time, and it still continues to exist. His ideas and solutions are largely still valid. His belief that society transitioned from feudalism to capitalism to socialism or communism. The perfect utopia will be a period of where will be a society in which a period of unemployment or underemployment are met with open arms as an opportunity for self actualization. What I propose we do. What I propose we do to help lessen this economic disparity. We reinstate a progressive income tax. The high echelons of wage earners starting at $200,000 a year pay a 30% tax rate. This increases to the very top 5% who pay a flat 50% tax with very limited write-offs. Create a 10% federal tax on top of any current taxes on alcohol. Make marijuana federally legal and tax it at 50%. Remove all corporate welfare and CRP to $20 per acre instead of $50. Institute a mandatory raise scale, both for tenure and cost of living for all employees in any vocation across the nation. And then what we can do with this money we will generate. Rebuild our secondary education. That should be the first priority. Make it great again. Give our students the ability to compete with the other great students in the world, our high school students. Free community college for all, and state college tuitions capped at $1,500 per semester or $1,000 per quarter. Make it easy on students financially. Free health care for everyone. Free drug rehabilitation. Encourage people to understand about social capital and how to use it and help them achieve more. Encourage everyone to network and create personal safety nets. Have the government take back the management of all prisons, hospitals, sanitations, and establish a national bank. Return quality jobs to society and take care of our citizens. So basically, we should move the United States toward a socialist capitalist hybrid. Restore the ability to achieve the American dream. Hold the wealthy to a responsibility of helping those less fortunate, and put an end to exploiting those in society with fewer resources. Thank you for listening. I hope the panel gives consideration to the ideas presented in my program.